All right, let's get started with review. Make sure we're good there. Cool. So I did a few things to get things set up for studio review. I'll tell you what those are. The first thing I did was I ran those copy and paste SQL commands to generate the tables. After I generated the tables using the SQL commands from the workbook, I then uploaded the CSV files. And then lastly, in my file right here, I added some to-do type statements just from the workbook. Then at the top, I have my select statements. I found that I liked having pre-written select statements, so if I wanted to see what was in that table, I could just go up there and just arrow and run a line and just see what's inside the table. Right, so the first thing that the studio asked us to do is after those previous steps is to return the mystery book titles and their ISBN numbers. So, for starters, we can select all the books, all from. I always forget that. And so here we don't have their genre, so we are going to need to join. So we'll say left join, and then we will say the name of the table we're joining, which is genre. And then we're going to say on. This is our statement for how we're going to sync the two tables up. So we will say book dot genre ID equals genre dot it's not plural. There we go. Okay, so we have a pretty good start here for this first query. We've proven that we can join the two tables. And so the thing that we want to do is instead of selecting all of the columns, we're going to narrow it down to just what they asked for. So we'll say title, comma, ISBN. And now we have just the titles and the numbers. Cool, so that's the first query. The next query is a little bit trickier. We want to return all of the titles and author's name for books written by authors who are currently living. Okay, so let's see here. I believe, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot that part of it, didn't I? Thanks. Where we will say dot. I like to use ID for this instead of saying like spelling out mystery. So I'm just going to look at the table here and find the ID for mystery. So we'll say ID equals 6. And so now we've filtered it down to just the titles, and then to prove that it works, I'll also say I think that might be good enough. It's not distinct. Yeah, so we can see these are all mystery titles. Cool. Yeah, I was missing my conditional where clause. Thank you. Jumping to the next one. Split this out a bit. Okay, so we want all the titles. So assuming we're going to start with selecting from the books, select all from the book table. And then we need all the titles and the authors' names. We'll worry about filtering that. But we don't have the authors yet, so we're going to need to join in the authors. So we'll go ahead and jump straight to a left join. And then we will say from the author table, and then we're going to connect the two tables on the author ID. So we'll say book dot author ID equals author dot author ID. So now we have everything. And so let's see here. We want to only do the authors that are currently living. Um, so I believe I ended up Googling. I want it to be not null, and I think there's something special for that. So we'll go MySQL not null. Oh, I want it to be null. Thank you. Not null. Yeah. Cool. So author ID will say where author dot death day. I think it's equals or is null. Thank you. Okay, so now we can see all of the death days are null, and so now that I have joined everything, I believe, let's see, double check all of the titles, author's first name, last name, for anybody authors who are currently living. Okay, so we have this filtered down correctly, and so the last thing I do, I prefer keeping this for last, just so I have plenty of visibility, is to filter this by the actual things we need. So we need book dot title. We need author dot first name, and then author dot last name. Right. So then when I run this, it filters it down, and we can see all the books by the living authors. Cool. So before we continue on to the next part of the studio, any questions thus far? Sure. Mm-hmm. And it worked just fine. Yeah, sometimes and I'm sure it would work fine here too. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't matter, and I don't know well enough to say specifically why it doesn't matter, and it does matter in other cases. Yes. Yes, for sure. That's when it matters. That's probably, yeah, you're probably right. That would be when it would matter. So if you had last name on two different tables, you need to specify the table itself. I think or I thought my memory, it might not be serving me well. I thought I had run into this where there wasn't a duplicate column name, but I could be wrong. So yeah. Cool. Thank you. All right. So the next thing we need to do is loan out a book. I'm gonna go ahead and look at the steps here. So we want to change available to false for a book. I think I'm just going to copy this. It's going to be a little bit easier. All right, so we'll say select all. Oh, hold on. This is an update command. Update. I need to take a quick look at the syntax. Update is going to be update table set, etc. Update and the table name for a book. It's going to be book set. I mean, for field name, I can check what the fields are with book. The field name is my brain's breaking. A-V-A-I-L-A-B-L-E. What? Oh, it's not spelling. Where is it spelling? No, it's not. Where book dot book ID, and then here we're going to pick one that we so choose. So we could say equals 10. This is hard-coded per se. Um, and then available equals false. Yeah, there we go. And so when I run this, it is going to, I already have that modified in my database. I'm going to do something real quick here because I was messing with this a little bit earlier. I'm just going to set them all to true. And then we'll go back to this. All right, so right now in our database, everything under available has a 1, which is equivalent to true in this context. And so if I go ahead and if I run this command, I'm going to set available to false for only one book, and that is book by the ID of number 10. Let's choose a smaller number so I don't have to scroll each time. We'll say number 3. So now if I select all the books, this book right here, the Golden Compass, is now checked out. It's no longer available. So that's the first part of this. The next part, sorry, the scrolling is terrible. Add a new role, add a new row to the loan table. And so we're going to need to include a bunch of different things. So we'll say insert into loan. Take a quick look at the rest of this. Insert into loan. Right. Then we'll have our things, our values. And so what we want to set is date out, and then the ID for patron ID and book ID. Book ID. Of course. Yeah, so the order doesn't matter. I think in lecture I made an analogy between this and a function. It's different in that sense. Yeah, yeah. So that's probably not the best analogy that I made. But yeah, it's based off of the name of the field, not the order. Yeah, great call out slash question. Cool. So the values here, today's date. So there are functions for getting today's date. I think there's cur date for current date. I think you can also spell it out fully with the underscore. I think it's the other way to do it. So the date out will be the current date. Patron ID, we will have to select someone for now, hard code them in. So we will go with Susan, ID number 2. Am I scrolling back in order? Patron is going to be Susan, and then the book ID, we already have that. We already know that it's number 3. So let's go ahead and run this row. It was successful, and so now we can look at the loan table, which I have a few things in there. But the most recent row is the bottom row right here, and for loan ID 4, we see that we have patron of ID 2, we have a date out, not a date back in, and then a book ID. Okay, cool. So then last thing for this section of the studio, we need to update the appropriate patron with the loan ID. And so there's a couple different ways we could do this. Let's start with update patron. Start with things that we know. So we're going to be changing loan ID. Double check that. Loan ID, yep. We'll be changing loan ID, and it's going to be the ID of the last thing we updated. And there is a um, loan ID equals, there is a function that will give you the last updated, um, the primary key of the last updated row anywhere in your database. So doesn't matter what table it came from. So let me see, is it last insert ID? This is what I'm looking for. So we could set it to this. You gotta be careful with these SQL functions like this, depending on the context. You just want to make sure that you know what it's doing. And so from here, and then we need to have a where clause. So we don't want to set this for everyone. Where we will say patron ID equals, we're going with number 2, which is Susan. Run this. Successful. We can look at our patrons, find Susan right here, and we can see that her loan ID is 4. Cool. Questions on that what we just wrote here? Yes. Uh, demonstrate with the line 25 of the subquery. Yeah. I see what you're saying. Um, let's see here. So you're saying for instead of doing last insert ID, have a subquery that's going to find the last one. Okay. Yeah, let's try that. I'll keep this line. I'll write underneath it. Yeah, no, it's a great idea. Loan ID equals for subquery, and then we'll keep the rest of it the same. And so here we are going to select all from. Let me think about this. Select all from. So how the loan ID? Let me look at the loan table real quick. Brain's got to catch up with the idea. So we have a book ID, patron ID. So if we selected all from loan, where let me see. I don't think I quite have it yet. I think I'm not quite there, but let's go ahead and try this and see if it complains. Yeah. I'm sorry. Um, select on. Let's see here. Might need to look at an example to hear. Oh, okay. Something like this. Nice. Yes. One row matched, 0 rows changed because it was already the same. Let's go ahead and try this real quick with another user and book. Well, actually, we'll leave it here. I think this is good. Yeah. Thank you for the suggestion. I like kind of stretching myself with the subquery thing here. Nice. All right. So moving forward, we will go ahead and undo all this. So we'll check a book back in. Go ahead and copy the comments so they're easier to keep myself on track. All right, so we will change available. We'll basically invert this line. This is going to be the smallest change. We're just going to change this from false to true. And then next, we need to update the appropriate row instead of creating one. So we'll say update, let's see. So it's going to be in loan set date n equals date, where then the book ID, let me see here. What's my word clause going to be? Where loan dot book ID equals 3. Is that undoing it appropriately? Yeah. Possibly. Let me look at the loan table real quick. This would be better to do not for the book ID, but by the loan ID, because if I update all of them by the book ID, I'll be updating previous check-ins and checkouts. Okay, so where loan ID equals let's see here. So I wonder if this is time for another subquery. I feel like there's a simpler solution for this. It's at like the back of my brain. Last or max or something like that? Is that um is this I've used this one before, so we're saying um something like this. Yeah, let's see, max. Yeah, so maybe I'll do a subquery with the select statement. Max, yeah. So we could do subqueries throw my brain off sometimes. All right, let's see here. Where select loan ID or max. Let's see here. Loan ID equals select max loan ID from loan. This makes sense in my head. Does anyone notice something I might be missing? We could try that. Talking.
I see where you're coming from on this side. I did it where I picked where date in was the
Oh, that's it. Okay, that's what we could do is where book ID equals 3 and how do you combine words? I haven't done that yet. Can we do
because what I did was book ID matching, patron ID matching, and the spaces.
yeah. That's a good idea. We'll do that. Patron ID equals our patron's ID 2, and the last one was day in, yeah, is null. Oh, thank you. Doesn't like. Oh, that's the wrong thing to do. There we go. Sweet, we got it. Let's go ahead and look at the loan table and make sure that we are still. Yeah, we're good. Cool. Thank you. Sweet. So now we're on to our last query, our rapid query. For this one, I know we're close to time, but I think we might be able to make it. This one, I basically chained a bunch of left joins. So we want the names of the patrons. So we'll start with select, start with select all, and we'll change it to names. Select all from patron. And then we will left join. Let me see what the patron has. They have loans. Loan. Do I need to where on that? No, not yet. Left join. Oh yeah. On patron dot loan ID equals loan dot loan ID. And then we'll left join book on book dot book ID equals loan dot book ID. And then we'll left join genre on genre dot genre ID equals book dot genre ID. So here we get everything, excuse me. And so we will go ahead and select, first we just want first name, and we want the genre, so we'll do, and so now we have all of this. Now, if for some reason a user had multiple fantasy books checked out, you would see multiple lines with fantasy showing up in there. So we could say select distinct, and then that would remove the duplicates. Cool. So we're at 8:30, so that's time. But I'll take any other questions if someone has one. Yes.
So earlier with true, false being 0 to 1, is that because SQL doesn't really contain Boolean logic and they'll just get kind of transformed into 0 to 1?
Yeah, it is. It's Boolean logic essentially. Yeah.
Okay.
Same. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah. Cool.